What's up everyone, it's Kelly and I am back with a nail art video, and today's a very exciting one. I'm partnering up with Starrily to show you a whole bunch of super easy neon summer nail art looks. So I'm using polishes from the new Starrily Noble Neons collection. I did just review it, so I'll link it up in the cards, but I'm also going to list all of the products down in the description. You can check that out, and Starrily did give me a special discount code for you guys, so you can use the code KMNeons13 for 13% off your whole order, and that is going to go until July 31st, so I'll put all of that info in the description. But without further ado, let's get started. So I'll start off easy with a no tools nail art look, meaning you do not need any other products besides the polishes and the brushes that come in them. So I'm actually going to start off with this base of rubidium, and this is actually the Holo version of Starrily's new neon pink, so I was very excited to see that. But once that base is dry, I'm going to go in with Krypton, which is the neon lime green. I'm going to wipe off most of the product off of the brush and just take a tiny bit, and I'm going to start to dab that in the corner of my nail, basically where the cuticle line is, and I am just splotching that out at first just because I want to get the product onto my nail, but then I'm going to take some time to finesse it. I know it looks crazy right now, but you got to trust the process. I'm basically just sculpting the little strawberry stem, and I promise it's easier than it looks. With imperfect things like fruits, you can get away with making your nail art look a little bit more imperfect, and it does end up looking intentional. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take Radon, which is the bright yellow. I'm going to wipe off pretty much all of the polish off of the brush, and then I'm just going to hold it sideways and start to dot on the little strawberry seeds. So this is really easy because strawberry seeds are not perfectly round. You actually want them to have a little bit of that elongation. So when you're working with a brush like this that's wide and flat, it's really easy to just create that without having to physically draw anything. You're kind of just dotting it onto your nail, and they're also not perfectly symmetrical, so you can kind of just go wherever you feel like your strawberry needs more seeds. And honestly, I have always thought that this type of nail art look takes a lot more effort and skill, but honestly, I feel like doing it with no extra tools, like without the pressure of using a nail art brush or anything like that, honestly makes it even easier. So very pleased with how this turned out. I think it's such a cute little look. It's very obviously strawberry vibes, and I love that little extra hollow sparkle that I got from the base color. So now let's move on to an even easier design. This one is a dotticure, and I am just using a toothpick for it. So I'm going to start off with my base color. I have the shade Krypton. It's a really vibrant neon green, and I'm going to take Vanta Black, which is the black cream shade, and I'm going to use my toothpick to start to dot on black dots, really focusing on the free edge of my nail. So the look that we're trying to create here is a gradient where the dots go from being really concentrated at the base of my nail, and then they sort of fade into smaller, more sparse dots as I go up on my nail. And this is the type of manicure that's really perfect to use a toothpick for, because you do not have to worry about making the dots uniform at all. Just depending on how much polish you put on your toothpick, you're gonna get bigger or smaller dots, and nothing here has to be perfect. You really just want all of the concentrated, less sparse dots to be on the free edge, and then you just get a little bit more sparse as you go up. And even you can see here, I started going up, and then I realized I really needed more dots on the bottom, so I just went back in and kept on adding dots, and they don't all have to be big on the bottom, small on the top. You can just mix and match just as long as you're getting that sort of gradient-like effect. And I honestly love this color combination. It's making me feel like it's poisonous frog kind of vibes, but this would also be a really cool manicure to do where you have a skittle on your nails where each nail is a different color of the rainbow, and then all of them have the uniformity of having the dotted gradient. I feel like that would be such a fun manicure. But yeah, I love the way this turned out. I especially love the green, like I said, but I think this would be really fun for any color or a skittle. All right, so let's move on to a slightly more daunting look. This is going to be a gradient, and I'm just going to use a cosmetic sponge for it. So I'm starting off with white, which is my favorite way to start off a gradient, and I just have that as the base. And then while that's drying, I'm going to prep myself. So I'm going to take 3 polishes. I've got helium, neon, and radon, and I'm going to take my little cosmetic sponge, and I'm going to paint a thick generous strip of each color slightly overlapping on my nails, and I actually have a little wrap around my skin just to protect it from the polish, but you could also use Scotch tape or you could just clean it up afterwards. And basically I am just going to dab that sponge onto my nail until it creates a gradient look. Now that went really fast, but I do have a full video on how to do a bunch of different gradients, so I'll link that up in the cards if you need a little bit more direction. But this on its own, such a fun look. I love the way that the colors blend into each other. I actually noticed when I was filming this little end part that I did get a little fuzz in my nail during the gradient sponging. So I have a way of fixing that. This is kind of an intermediate technique. It requires just a little bit more ability, but basically I am just gonna cover that up with the silhouette of a palm tree. And even though I'm calling this intermediate, honestly, palm trees are a very easy nail art look to do because basically you just have to draw, honestly, it kind of looks like a spider at first. You're just drawing on this spider and then you take your brush and you kind of just smudge it along the spider. This is a very weird description, but yeah, you're kind of just smudging it along and making it look a little sloppy because leaves look a little bit sloppy, and you're kind of just filling in the area until it starts to look like a palm tree, which actually happens pretty fast. I did end up thickening the base of my palm tree because I thought it looked a little bit too thin, but yeah, definitely a more intermediate technique if you don't want to get into doing freehand nail art. But sometimes I get a little fuzz in my gradient just because those cosmetic sponges aren't always the easiest to use without getting a little bit of dust in there, but you can always cover it up with something if you want. You can also do that little gradient dotticure on this to cover it up. It's really endless the ways that you can kind of accentuate the gradient. So now moving into one of my favorite nail art designs to do. It's just a classic, and that is these little flowers that you can use with a dotting tool, or honestly, you could also use a toothpick to get this design. I am using a white base and then I'm going in with rubidium and vanadium, which are two of the new Holo versions of the neon polishes. Honestly, they are so gorgeous. I love that slightly jelly-like feel of them, but you can also build them up to full coverage. But basically what I'm doing is I'm making one center dot that is going to be the center of my flower, and then I put 5 dots around it to create this little 5-pointed flower. And I started off with the pink, then I moved into the orange. Honestly, looking at it now, it's kind of giving me a little bit of a Dunkin' Donuts vibe, but I love Dunkin' Donuts, so I'm fine with it. So honestly, these types of flowers are so easy to do, and you can really vary them based on the size of the dotting tool, or if you're using a toothpick, you're gonna get a little bit of a different size here. I feel like this kind of smaller flower is fun to really fill up the nail, but if you want, you could just do less flowers, you could do more bigger flowers, whatever you want to do to customize it. So I'm going to customize it a little bit further. I'm going to take Radon and I'm going to put a little center dot into each flower. And a lot of people ask me why I do the center dot last instead of doing that first and then doing the color around it. And I feel like I like better when the little dot in the center is a perfect circle. And if I do it first, then some of the other dots around the edges are going to overlap it a little bit. Hopefully that makes sense, but that's why I like to do it. You can really do whichever way you want. I think this would also be very cute to do a white or even a black center. I think that would be really cool, but this is just giving me like a very fun, bright, summery look, and just that little hint of Holo makes it extra special. Now let's move on to a design that I honestly love doing. It might not be everybody's cup of tea because it's a little bit on the grungier side, but it is one of my favorite looks, and that is doing a no tools gradient. So I'm going to start off with Krypton, and I'm going to wipe off most of the polish, and then whatever is left on the brush, I'm just gonna very sloppily add into the center, and you can see there's kind of these little streakiness. We really want that look because that's gonna help the colors meld together. So now I'm going to take Radon. I'm going to do the same thing, wiping off pretty much all of the polish I can get off of the brush and only leaving what is in really the center of the brush. And I'm going to do that along one side and kind of just swipe that into the green a little bit and really start to blend them together. Now, this type of look, it never fully blends together, but from a distance, it definitely gives more of a gradient look. And I think there's just something very grungy and cool about it. And you can really do it with any colors as long as they blend together a little bit. So I'm going to finish off this manicure with Xenon, and this one is the blue. So I'm just going in, same thing, wiped off pretty much all of the polish from the brush, and I am just swiping that onto the left side of my nail. And this one is a little bit darker than the green, so I went back in with the green and I kind of swiped over it again just to make it a little bit more of a seamless blend there. And you might notice I'm getting a little sloppy around my cuticles. This is one of those manicures that you really can't avoid doing that for, just because you're kind of pushing the brush up to the edge of your nail, but it's really easy to just clean it up with a Q-tip or a little brush, and then once you apply your top coat, it's gonna blend in a little bit smoother. And honestly, I love the way this looks. I think it's such a cool design, and it's really fun that you can get this sort of gradient look without using any tools. All right, I feel like every summer I absolutely have to do this one manicure, and some years I do it a little bit more complex. This time I was feeling a very simple vibe, and that is little cherries. So I'm going to take a bigger dotting tool, and again, you can use a toothpick for this. I just wanted my cherries to be pretty big, and I'm taking the color Helium, and I am just doing 2 dots side by side all over my nail. And then I'm going to take Krypton and a little brush. This is also something you can use a little toothpick for, and it's something that I have used a toothpick for in the past. And you're basically drawing little V's everywhere to connect your cherries. And honestly, that is all you need to do to create a cherry design, and it definitely does look like cherries. Like I said, in the past I have done more complex versions where I do little light reflections on the cherries, or I'll do little leaves on the stems, but this is in its most basic form the cherry manicure. I love it in neon version. I think that doing it a little bit more simplified with bigger looking cherries is definitely the way to go, because you can see from a distance what it is, and it's really cute. This one I would say is another intermediate sort of design. I'm going to start off with Helium as my base color, and what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to draw a black border around my nail, and I am going to make the nail look like it is a cartoon. So I'm sure you've seen that style before, where people will do 3-dimensional bags or cakes where they create this outline on it and almost make it look like it's 2-dimensional again. So this one is a little bit more difficult just because you have to use a nail art brush and very carefully apply black around the edge of your nail. Now, I am not that steady with a nail art brush, so I did have to go back in with Helium and kind of just smooth out some of those edges, make them look a little bit nicer. But this was the first step to creating my cartoon nail. The second step is you want to take white, in this case I'm using Void, and basically you draw a little reflection on your nail. So really it's just a little curvy exclamation point. So I'm drawing on a nice thick top part and then a long little dot of my exclamation point. And this is what it looks like before I applied my top coat. You can start to see the design come forward, but it really looks the coolest when you have matte top coat over it, because it kind of pushes everything down into a 2-dimensional space. Now, I was a little eager to see what mine looked like, so I applied my top coat a little bit too early. You can see it kind of bled through a tiny bit at the top. Honestly, I would still wear this because I don't think anybody would notice unless they were in this extreme close-up like we are right now. But you do want to be a little bit patient when you're working, especially with black nail polish, because it does tend to bleed down onto the nails if you don't wait for it to dry. And the final design that I wanted to share with you is a funky little tie-dye manicure, except for I'm going to make it a little bit different from the usual. I'm actually going to do it entirely out of dots. So I am using my dotting tool, but again, you can use a toothpick for this, and I have every color of the rainbow. So basically I'm just starting off by doing one little center dot and then slowly curving the dotted line around my nail in a sort of tie-dye pattern. And this is tough when you're working with slightly bigger dots. I think this is actually an easier manicure to do when you're using a toothpick, so I probably should have done that. But basically you want to leave yourself enough room for every color in your tie-dye to be on your nails. So you can see I have pretty short, small nails. So I started off with a decent sized dot, and I wasn't able to get a full tie-dye look with every single color, as you'll see at the end, but I still was able to get the effect. So it is really cool. But yeah, in this case, I would definitely recommend using a toothpick for this design, because the finer you can get the dots, the more intense that rainbow tie-dye look is going to be. So as you can see, I'm basically just following the line that I started with, that dotted line, and I'm going in with each color, and I'm just adding another layer of dots to create that swirly tie-dye sort of pattern. This is also something you can make a little bit more intermediate if you want, where you can use a little brush and just kind of create these little tiny fuzzy brush strokes and do the same design, but instead of dots you have those little fuzzy brush strokes. And that's another way I love to do it, but I think this is like a more funky way to do it because it's slightly more abstract. But yeah, like you can see, I didn't get the full amount of colors here. I was only able to get a few purple dots, and I wanted to have the whole rainbow, but I still thought it looked cool, so I thought I'd show you. Honestly, looking at it now, it kind of reminds me of, I don't remember what they're called. Do you guys remember those little sugar dots that would be on a like piece of sticker paper? That is what these look like to me. So those are all of my nail art designs, but before we wrap up the video, I thought I would throw in a couple of little bonus swatches of some new Starrily polishes that just came out. This first one is called Crystal, and it is a silver reflective polish, so it has that flash reactive pigment in it where when you shine a flashlight or your phone camera on it, it creates this completely unreal shimmery look. And actually in regular lighting, you can still see that depth of shimmer is so intense. I think it just looks so cartoonishly vibrant in every lighting. So I ended up getting really nice coverage in 2 coats. You still get a touch of that visible nail line, but it's very softened. But when you see this under your phone flash, it looks completely opaque. It looks bright, blinding white. It is so cool and fun. So definitely a fun reflective polish to wear. It does dry down a little bit gritty, so you do need a nice thick coat of top coat for this to be smooth. And then the other new shade is this one, Venom, and this is a black multi-chrome polish. So when you look at it head on, it actually looks black, but you can start to see red into orange, into yellow, green, blue. It really shows the whole rainbow, but I would say the main colors that you see are the red and the black, and I was so impressed with the opacity of this one. Usually I'm used to most multi-chrome polishes being 3 coaters, but this one gave me really impressive opacity in 2. It was super smooth and easy to use, and honestly, it just looks so vampy and evil. I absolutely love it. But yeah, that is it for my nail art, my little bonus swatches. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Definitely let me know in the comments which nail art design is your favorite and what you think of these 2 new polishes. And a quick thank you to my supporters on Patreon, my royal astronomer Amanda M, as well as my cosmic admirals Rocket Man's daughter, Paula, Ken, Rosie, and Courtney. I really appreciate your support, and I'll see you all in my next video. Bye!